Hello, everybody. We're going to be working with measuring for the first part of our technology class. Measuring is extremely important in technology and engineering. When an engineer or an architect designs a project, they have to communicate with the people that are building it how big or how small the different parts have to be. That allows the people that build it to understand what that engineer is thinking. Measuring is a form of communication. It allows us to talk to one another and accurately describe how big or how small something is. To get started, we have a few questions that we'd like you to answer. First off, what are the two different systems of measurement called? How many inches are there in 1 foot? How many equal spaces are there in 1 inch? I'll give you a minute to think about those. All right, so when we talk about the two different measuring systems, we have the US customary system, which can also be called the standard system or the English system of measure, and the metric system of measure. How many inches are there in 1 foot? There are 12 inches in 1 foot. All of those inches are an equal distance apart, making each foot an equal distance apart as well. How many equal spaces are there in an inch? There are 16 equal spaces in an inch on the rulers we'll be using. Let's get started with the steps of measuring. The first step is to write down the previous inch. Now on the slide you see we have an arrow pointing to a mark we are going to measure to. We want to write down the inch mark that comes before it. This is the inch for our measurement. So we would write down the number 2. Why don't you try it now? We have the mark we will measure to in red with a spot on the arrow. This is the inch mark for our measurement, so in this case, you should have written down the number 3. The second step is to write down the number 16 with a line over it. We'd call that line a fraction bar. A fraction bar separates the two numbers in a fraction. The bottom number of the fraction represents the total amount of parts we have that we're talking about. So for instance, if we ordered an 8-cup pizza, we should have 8 slices of pizza in that circle. In an inch, we're going to have 16 equal pieces. We're starting to set up a fraction. Now you try it. Make sure the 16 with the fraction bar is on your example. Step 3. Count the marks starting with the first small mark after the inch. Count the line till we reach the mark we are measuring to. Write this number on the top of the fraction. Now the second part of the fraction is how many pieces we have out of the total. If we were just to measure to inches, those measurements wouldn't be accurate enough to precisely build objects like a chair or a table or a window or anything else that we might have to manufacture and build. So we have to make a way to make those measurements a little bit more precise. And that's why an inch is broken down into smaller units. So with this, we're always going to start with that first small mark after the inch. Then we're going to count each line until we get to the mark we're measuring to. So if we were to count these all in order, we would come up with the number 10, and we would write that on top of the fraction bar. Now you try. Start counting with the first small mark after the inch and stop when you reach the mark we are measuring to. Make sure to count each of the lines. Did you get the number 7? You should have, and that means we have 7 out of the 16 pieces in that inch. Step 4 of the measuring process is to reduce the fraction to its lowest terms by dividing by the number 2, 4, or 8. Why the numbers 2, 4, or 8? Because when we reduce a fraction, we have to divide the top and bottom number of that fraction by the exact same number. We could never, ever divide the fraction by different numbers. So we know the 16 is going to be on the bottom of our fraction. The only numbers that can go into 16 evenly are the number 2, 4, or 8. So now we look at the top number and we ask ourselves, will 2 go into 10 evenly? Yeah. Will 4 go into 10 evenly? No. Will 8 go into 10 evenly? No. So the biggest number that goes into both 10 and 16 is the number 2. If we divide 10 by 16 by 2 and 16 by 2, we get the number 5/8. The fraction 10/16 is the same as 5/8. 5/8 is just in its lowest term. And we know we've come to the lowest term when we have an odd number on top of the fraction. Now you try with this. Can we reduce this by 2, 4, or 8? Look at the top number. Will 2 go into 7 evenly? No. Will 4 go into 7 evenly? No. Will 8 go into 7 evenly? No. 7 is an odd number, and it can't be reduced by 2, 4, or 8. So this fraction is already in its lowest terms. We have one step left, and that's step 5. And all we have to do here is rewrite the number as a mixed number. If we go back to our previous example, we have 2. We reduced, and we got 10/16. We have to get rid of that stuff. If you look at the whole process, we wouldn't want all 10/16 and divisible by 2 in those areas. We want to write it like it is on the bottom, 2 and 5/8. So remember the whole process. Step 1, write down the inch. Step 2, put a 16 with the fraction bar. Step 3, write down the 10. Step 4, reduce if we can. Remember, we have to have an even number on top to reduce. And once it's reduced, we'll rewrite it as a mixed number. Hopefully you guys can make sense of this. You can watch the video through a few times. I'm going to ask that you complete a short worksheet, which is just a few practice questions, just to make sure that you understand it. Please turn this in, as that's how I'll be taking attendance and knowing you watched the video, participated. If you have any questions, we'll have uh, I have office hours on Tuesday and Thursday, and you can come meet with me then. If you have any questions, you could also email me through my school email. I hope everyone has a great day. Do the best job you can. See you later.